Now we will discuss Shakespeare tragedies. In Shakespeare tragedies, the main protagonist has a flaw in his character. This flaw is hamartia, as named earlier by Aristotle. It leads to his or her downfall, I mean the hero or heroine. There are both internal and external struggles. Inside this character, there might be internal struggle, and this struggle between two opposite forces, either good or bad, and so on. And often a bit of the supernatural thrown in for good measure and tension. Some of the plays, there is a kind of supernatural conflict between human and the supernatural aspect, like Macbeth, for example. Now, here we have a list of the major plays, tragic plays written by William Shakespeare. The first one is Antony and Cleopatra. Okay, and we have Hamlet, we have Julius Caesar, we have King Lear, Macbeth, Othello, Romeo and Juliet, Timon of Athens, Titus Andronicus. These are examples of Shakespeare's tragedies. Okay, we'll move now to Shakespeare comedies. Shakespeare comedies are sometimes further subdivided into a group called romances. Okay, we call this problem plays because critics sometimes discuss the romances alone as a genre, separate from the comedies. Other critics classify it under romances. Other critics classify them as tragicomic. So we have a problem in the naming, but generally speaking, the comedies are drama that have elements of a humor, tragedy, and complex plot. Examples of Shakespeare's comedies: All's Well That Ends Well As You Like It, The Comedy of Errors, Sample Line, Love's the Everlast, etc. This is a list of examples of Shakespeare comedies. Now, Shakespeare's histories. Sure, the history plays are all about real figures, but it can also be argued that with the downfall portrayed of the kings, Richard II and Richard III, those history plays could also be classified as a tragedy. As we know, Richard II and Richard III are histories, but because they end in a tragic way, they also characterize as tragedies. As they were built back in Shakespeare's day, okay, they would easily be called the tragedy plays where the main characters of each fictional. The 10 plays generally classified as history plays, they are as follows: Henry IV Part 1, Henry IV Part 2, Henry V, Henry VI Part 1, Henry VI Part 2, Henry VI Part 3, Henry VIII, King John, Richard II, and Richard III. These are examples of Shakespeare's histories. As you see, they are about, or they carry the name of English monarchs. Now, importance of Shakespeare's work. We move now to the second topic. Why do we consider the plays written by Shakespeare, as well as the sonnets and the poems that written by this writer, as important? Actually, we don't have a final answer, okay? But generally speaking, they are important because Shakespeare has made a significant contribution to the English literature through his work on drama or plays. Reading and analyzing his work also provide insight into the culture and the society. We can understand the Elizabethan society better if we study his plays. He sheds light on the society at his time. Okay, another thing that we have many expressions and vocabulary that Shakespeare used, and the English language owes this thing to Shakespeare. Okay, we have many expressions introduced by Shakespeare. Generally speaking, all contribution, Shakespeare made a great contribution to English literature. Shakespeare created beautiful works of art with his unique use of the English language. He used the language brilliantly, and his style, no one until nowadays used the way Shakespeare used language with. His poems had an important impact on the poets who followed him. As you know, when we study the poems of Shakespeare, we realize that Shakespeare made a great contribution to the sonnet by introducing the English sonnet or the Shakespearean sonnet in comparison with the other poets who follow the Italian sonnet or Petrarchan sonnet. Shakespeare had a profound understanding of us as a human being, okay? Part of his greatness that he depicts the characters as a real representation of a human being. He was not exaggerating, and he doesn't use imagination a lot in characterizing the hero or the heroine. They are human beings. They are like us. They love, they commit mistakes, they hate, they became nervous. In other way, he understands human nature and how people interact in certain situations. So this understanding of a human nature made him universal. He was not depicting or speaking about Englishmen alone. No, he was speaking about human in general, and this humanity that made him a universal writer. For example, he focuses on the character and the way character think, how he feels. He, of course, he or she, how and why they act in a special way by focusing on the psychological motivation of the characters. Shakespeare wrote about the human condition in different ways. Of course, this is part of his greatness. Okay.
دكتورة مش عارفة